Welcome to Roll for Crit and our preview for the game Wild Serengeti, which is on Kickstarter right now. This is a worker placement game in which you and the other players are competing to film the best nature documentary you can, position the animals, get the scenes that you need in order to win all the awards and have your documentary get the most buzz over everyone else who's filming one in the game.
As in real life, the best documentary will be decided on who gets the most points, which you'll earn throughout the game. Now, you'll have two of these little camera meeples, one to keep track of points, the other to choose your actions. We're going to always start off with whoever has the first person tree, and you're going to place your meeple on one of the empty spaces. Do keep in mind, if you're playing with under 4 or maybe 3 players, there are spots labeled with that, and if you don't have that player count, put a lock over it so you know that can't be used. You're going to place your camera meeple on one of these spaces down here. If it is empty, you have to pay only 1 coin. You're going to start with a certain number of these depending on what round it is. If, however, you want to go on someone else's space because you really need that, it's going to cost you an extra coin. So it's going to be a little bit pricier. Now, in addition to that, you may spend 2 more coins after that to take another action. So that could be very expensive, but maybe it's worth it to do 2 things at once. You also cannot take either of these actions in the first round, but after that, everything is fair game. So let's actually go over what the actions are. The first 4 up here are placing an animal. Depending on which square you go, you can place anything in that square. So all the large carnivores are here, large mammals are here, we got your smaller herbivores here, and scavengers here. The only restriction when placing them is that they need to be placed in a space not already occupied. So this crocodile can go in the mountain area, this grasslands, or in the river. It's wherever you want it to go. On the bottom half is where you can do a bit more manipulation. These first 2 are about moving them. If you go here, you can look at any 2 animals and swap their position. They don't need to be next to each other, but like I said, you can't do it on the first round. The one next to it is moving one of them up to 3 spaces. This did not include diagonally, so no going like that, but you can go 1, 2, 3. This is a very good way to manipulate the board to later on when you need to do some scoring. Speaking of which, it's time to look at scene cards. These 2 involve the scene cards. The first one is picking one from this beautiful lineup right here. This is the main way how you're going to score points as well as get some more resources. Now, if you don't like anything there, you can go all the way over here. That lets you actually refresh the lineup. You'll remove all these cards, put 6 new ones up, and then be able to take one. So if you're really looking for a specific lineup or resource, you're probably going to head over there. Once you've done that action, it'll move on to the next person's action. This will keep going until someone passes, usually because they ran out of money to pay for actions.
Now let's talk about these scene cards. You will start with some scene cards already in your tableau at the beginning of the game, and as we said, you'll be able to purchase more later on as part of your actions during your turn, and you're going to be attempting to score these cards, fulfill them by meeting the requirements printed on them, and all those requirements are going to involve the positions and types of animals on the board. So there are 3 different types of scene cards and 3 different ways that you can fulfill them. The first is a straight line scene. Straight line scene, pretty straightforward. You just need the animals indicated on the card, and you need them to be in a straight line, either horizontally or vertically. They don't need to be directly next to each other. There could even be other animals in between them. You just want that type of animal in that position in a straight line somewhere on the board. Then there is the adjacency scene. This one does care about being directly adjacent. That could include diagonals, however, so anything in those spaces surrounding one animal. You'll also notice that some of these have a little symbol next to them which indicates a terrain type. There's 4 types of terrain on the board, and some cards will require you to have animals in those terrains in addition to the other requirements. Then there's the terrain scenes, the final type of card, which only care about the terrain types. So in this case, it shows you a bunch of different animals and which types of terrains it wants them to be in. Doesn't matter where they are on the board at all. As long as you have those animals somewhere in those positions, then on your turn you can say, I've completed this card. It's a free action to complete one of your scene cards. If the conditions are met, you can do it right away. You can even do multiple in one turn if you have the requirements requirements fulfilled. When you do, you move them over here to your completed section. They're going to give you a reward, so that could be just points. You'll move up the track right away, or it could be some special resources. For instance, you have food tokens. If you have a food token, you can spend one of these on your turn to move an animal one space. So that can be very handy. Again, that's a free action, so you can use that to your advantage. And there's also the special effects tokens. You can use these to ignore one terrain requirement on any one of your cards to fulfill it if you spend it. In other words, you use green screen or something like that to make the terrain whatever you need it to be. Sometimes they will have certain requirements for these symbols in the corner, like these plant, fruit, and flower ones. There's a bunch of cards that will say, oh, you'll get points depending on how many sets of those symbols you have. So those symbols are important for that reason. Or you might have a symbol that shows a food token or a special effects token. That means you will actually receive one of those tokens at the start of each round. So you will be able to generate those tokens later on. Finally, there are the ones with these animal symbols. Those will be important for a certain phase during certain rounds later on in the future. Some cards have heart symbols in the corner. Those will just equate to points at the end of the game. They represent social media likes. You're generating buzz for your movie. And then there are also just 5 cards with this diamond symbol. That just means that those are extra hard cards worth a whole bunch of points. So you can try to take them on if you dare. Now you'll see there's this lovely mountain over here, which is the round tracker. Will tell you each round how many coins players are going to get at the start of it. And sometimes there will be a special event. So every game there are going to be 2 random animal competitions, and those are going to reward the players who have a specific animal the most times in their completed scene cards. So for instance, the gazelle one here, everyone would look at their cards. Whoever has the most gazelles across the ones they've finished, they will get some points. Second place also gets some points, but that's it. It doesn't go further than second place. And then you remember these animal symbols over here, the little paw prints, those will count as 1 for each animal type for whatever it is. So if you had one of these in there, that would count as 2 gazelles also. So there's a couple different ways you can try to score points with those. And then there will also be a couple of migration events. When there is one of these migration events, as indicated with this symbol here, you are going to draw a card from the migration deck, and it's going to indicate certain spaces on the board. And all of the animals indicated, it could change depending on number of players, are going to be removed. They go back to their original starting spaces, and if you want them back on the board, you're going to have to do it again yourself or hope somebody else does. So that's a way that the board will get reshuffled. It's not going to always look the same, and maybe some animals that were harder to move around, you'll now have a chance to put them where you really want them to be. Keep playing the game for 6 rounds until the very end. Total up all the points you gathered from here, as well as any likes you have, and see who has the most. There's also an advanced variant that you can throw in if you feel like it, where each player gets one of these cards at the beginning that will give them some kind of an advantage, a different way, an alternate way to score that's unique to them, such as the narrator here, which rewards you for different groups of resources or icons that you have. So different thematic things relating to aspects of the documentary that will give each player more of a unique feel if that's something you want to throw in.
That is how Wild Serengeti runs. You can see it's sort of a shared territory control. You really want to try to line up those meeple in the best way for you, but probably because you're sharing the animals, maybe there's a good way to be like, oh, if I put this elephant here, that's good for me, but I know it's good for you, so you won't mess with it.
Right. Yeah. All of the cards in your tableau are going to be face up. So you can look around and kind of see what other people are trying to do and possibly just reverse their moves, or maybe even try to collaborate with someone and be like, look, we both want the elephant here. So that this way I know that at least one other person is going to be doing what I want it to do. And yeah, it's all about, in the beginning, the board is totally empty. So a lot of the first round is really just populating it and throwing animals out there. And then later on, it becomes, I think, much more of a puzzle of trying to figure out which ones of these can I fulfill easily? How quickly can I get these animals in the right positions, hoping other people won't mess with it along the way.
And of course, with those migratory effects, that could completely change your plan, but will also probably open up the board. So maybe you're like, I'll never get a chance to get one of those elephants down there. Well, now the elephant's back up here, so you can play it. And especially in the 2-player mode, but also in the higher counts, there's going to be plenty of, I could want 3 things, but I'm going to go here first because I know you want the lion space to place a lion. And since we're already occupying this, I'm going to make it a pain for you.
Yeah, it's interesting because, most worker placement games, I think of you just place your worker, and if the space is open, you're good to go. In this one, you have a set number of actions, which are in the form of these coins. But I do like that. I always like in a worker placement game when if somebody has that space, you're not totally out of luck. If you really, really, really want it, you can spend the extra to get it. Or you can just be like, I'll wait and try to do a different card and hope, they have to move out of their space on their next turn. So hopefully that'll work out for me there later.
Well, not only that, it's an interesting gambit to even try to maybe spend a lot more than other people. So like, if everyone's being very like, I'm going to spend only one, and you're like, I spend like all mine in 2 turns, then they only get one more when they were hoping to get at least 2 more actions to sort of set things up or something. So that's it's an interesting, I don't know if you should always do it, but something that I think it opens up a different strategy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I think it has also a thing that a lot of these types of games have of, choosing, do I go for a bunch of smaller cards early on that are easier for me to score and try to build myself up? Or maybe you see a real big one right away and you're like, oh, I'm just going to go for that powerhouse and try to get a ton of points right off the bat. Or you might get lucky even sometimes and just, that one that came out in the lineup, if I get that, the conditions are met already. I don't even have to do any work for it. That also feels pretty good if you manage to do that.
I think we didn't forget, but we've been pushing it off. We should mention just how beautiful all these pieces are. These aren't like little teeny meeple. This is a giant gator that takes up like an entire square.
Yes, you got lots of big, colorful animals to play with. This is a prototype, so I don't know 100% if all of this is going to look exactly the same. Yes, that's a fun thing. If you like to play around with animal meeples, there's plenty of those for you there. If you like, I think later on the lighter end of worker placement games with this natural theme of animals and stuff like that, and you like the puzzle aspect of trying to place things in certain configurations and trying to fulfill the requirements on these cards, if that sounds fun to you, then you should check out Wild Serengeti on Kickstarter. Also to see if there are any changes to the final game and what all the tiers are and everything like that. We will have a link to the Kickstarter campaign, which is live right now, in our description down below the video.
Let us know what you think of this game. If you love these giant meeples, we'd love to hear from you. Until then, I'm Will.
I'm Jonathan.
And this has been Roll for Crit.
You know what would be great? If you liked this video and subscribed to our channel to stay tuned for more updates. You could also even go over to our Patreon page and support us there. We'll give you some really cool rewards in exchange for that. Or maybe you want to support us by buying some merch. You can check out our merch store where we are selling t-shirts with cool designs and other things too. Check it out.